Welcome back to the Daily Taoist with Will Nemo. We are talking about the Tao Te Ching and how to get back into spirit and alignment with the way. I will be reading from the book Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, Living the Wisdom of the Tao by Dr. Wayne Dyer. Today I'll be talking about verse 16, living with constancy. Become totally empty. Let your heart be at peace. Amidst the rush of worldly comings and goings, observe how endings become beginnings. Things flourish each by each, only to return to the source, to what is and what is to be. To return is to the root, is to find peace. To find peace is to fulfill one's destiny. To fulfill one's destiny is to be constant. And to know the constant is called insight. Not knowing this cycle leads to eternal disaster. Knowing the constant gives perspective. This perspective is impartial. Impartiality is the highest nobility. The highest nobility is divine. Being divine, you will be at one with the Tao. Being at one with the Tao is eternal. This way is everlasting, not endangered by physical death. Living with constancy. The 16th verse of the Tao Te Ching describes the value of being extremely conscious of the cycle of all. Rather than viewing change as disruptive, unwanted occurrence, you can choose to view the variances in your world as valuable influence in the cycle of a Tao-centered existence. When you see as change the only constant there really is, you start to recognize it as an expression of an ongoing life that's a welcome clue to your own purpose and meaning. In this way, you're returned to the experience of your source and the peace of an impartial perspective. Begin this process by altering your ego based thoughts and letting yourself feel the bliss of being at one with the Tao. Then become an acute observer of how your world really works and allow yourself to be in harmony with the cyclical nature of all living things. There's an immutable cycle of no life, life, no life that we are a part of. As things come and then they go, life materializes in a variety of forms. It's here, and then at some point it ends in what we call death. This coming and going might seem like a temporary condition, but it's actually the ultimate constant because it never ceases. Embrace this nature of cycling change, and you'll be thriving. An ending may feel like a reason to mourn, whether it be the closing of a phase of your life, the completion of a project, the termination of a relationship, or death itself. But Lao-Tzu invites you to realize that after things flourish, they return to source as to what is and what is to be. This constant of the cycle, constancy of the cycles of life is an opportunity to return to your source of your root, to where it is and where it is to be located. The ultimate place of peace and enlightenment is in this continuous return to nameless, placeless sight of your origination. Lao-Tzu tells you that, in a sense, having a sense of inner peace comes with the returning to the source, where all cycles begin and end. This is the fulfillment of your own personal destiny. What is, you're here to know, and is to be with the Tao and the constant behind the comings and the goings of life. You have been in many bodies already, and you're in a new one every day. You've been in and out of many relationships, and yet the eternal you survive despite transitions from beginning back into endings. You're now being urged to know yourself as a physical creation and as a piece of the everlasting Tao. The Tao that animates all existences, including your own, is totally impartial. It plays no favorites. It brings winter regardless of whether you want it to or not. It sends those you love on to other people and then back, irrespective of your desires to have it otherwise. All of life must return to it. There are no expectations or apologies. When you are aware of this steadying influence, you approach an element of one cycle in life, leading to what Lao-Tzu calls eternal disaster. When one person leaves you, it feels like the end of the world. When a business venture fails, you flunk out of school, or you have a painful illness or injury, you feel depressed. If you get trapped in those emotional endings, you are not permitting them to be a natural part of life, leading you to feel disconnected from your source. You become stuck in the world rush of worldly comings and goings, unable to remember the constancy where endings become beginnings. The reality is that beginnings are often disguised as painful endings. So when you know there's a constant behind the pressure, behind a moment's disappointment, you can sense that this too shall pass, as it always has and always will. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. This is what Lao Tzu seems to be telling you in the 16th chapter of the Tao Te Ching. Take time as an impartial observer of life, particularly when an ending is causing despair. Remind yourself that your source is at work within this event, and that when you make a decision to connect with that source with your thoughts, all endings are part of the cyclical process. You are merely returning to a life of constancy, where Lao Tzu taught in this passage. You don't have to learn anything new, change any behavior, or adopt any new strategies. Just think about the word return and take comfort in the ever constant Tao, which brings peace to despair. The Tao never leaves or disappoints, and it is always impartial. Whatever you are in the emotional cycle, you're not being judged. Rather, you're living in to be all phases, free of judgment and living with constancy. Write these words and post them in a conspicuous place of your living environment. This too shall pass. This phrase will remind you that change is the only constant in life. Everything you notice is a cycle of coming and going. Everything. There are no exceptions. Know this and let your thoughts flow in the constancy of change. This is the root, the source of all cyclical happenings. This is perfect. It is divine. It is something you can totally rely upon. Brings forth spring flowers. It brings the aging process. It brings rebirth. It brings new relationships. It is the Tao and it is constant. Return to it and experience your eternal essence here and now in the temporary container you call your body and all of its dramas. This too shall pass. You can count on it. Dedicate a day. Do the Tao now. Dedicate a day to consciously seeking situations to practice impartially observing endings as beginnings, challenging yourself to find a specific number of by noon. Begin in the morning by being aware that the end of a sleep is the beginning of a wake. Break your waking time into sections, noticing without judging the endings that make space for beginnings. Start to consciously live with constancy by opening your mind to the fact that change is the only certain thing, remembering to include all of your feelings in its cycle. Impartially observing, sad, for instance, permits its natural ending to transform to a beginning. You are working, you are doing. You are doing the Tao. Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, Living the Wisdom of the Tao by Dr. Wayne Dyer, uh, verse 16. Thanks for listening, guys. Really appreciate it. If you're out there in the Twitter sphere, Instagram sphere, Facebook sphere, podcasting sphere, please connect with me. I have an account on Podmatch and Matchmaker.fm. Um, would love to do podcast swaps, something of that nature. Please check out my entire body of work, the Yukon Gold podcast, the Doomer Bloomer podcast, of course, the Daily Taoist podcast, as well as the Hard Times podcast and the Broken Link. Once again, if you want to connect with me, I'm most active on social media, Twitter, at my handle at the Daily Taoist, um, or what have you. Instagram at the Daily Taoist as well, and the Facebook page of the same name. Uh, Please like, thumbs up, subscribe to my content on all the platforms, whether it be YouTube, uh, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your content. Just make sure that you're giving me a great review. Podchaser is the best place, guys. Go to podchaser.com and leave a review there. Really helps with the show. Have yourself a great and positive evening or morning, wherever you are in the world. And namaste from the Daily Taoist, Will Nemo. Cheers.